Los Angeles is the newest sanctuary city. The city council recently voted to stop the use of local police resources to enforce deportations. President-elect Donald Trump is making the removal of undocumented immigrants a priority on day one. Trump said he would ask Congress to pass a law outlawing sanctuary cities across the country.
Some of those cities include New York, here in Washington, D.C., Chicago, Boston, and San Francisco. Now, the law would not stop the government from carrying out mass deportations in Los Angeles, but the new measure does signal that local officials are standing with its substantial immigrant population.
One user on X wrote, 100% fine with arresting the LA City Council for harboring illegal aliens. We do not want LA as a sanctuary city. Another wrote, Boston's mayor has vowed to fight deportations. LA's mayor pushed its sanctuary city ordinance. Denver's mayor says he will go to jail to protect illegals. Imagine if they fought this hard for their actual constituents. This seems to me like totally misreading the political moment we're in, where immigration was the number one concern, immigration inflation, number one concern of voters. The desire to do something about illegal immigration is very, very strong. There is a consensus around that among the people. Not, I don't think, to deport every last illegal immigrant in this country. I don't think, I personally don't want to hassle otherwise law-abiding Americans who are working and contributing meaningfully to American society, but certainly to begin with those who have who have engaged in other criminal behavior, to do something there, and not running a city and voting to decide to not have the local police assist in those efforts seems politically bad for the Democrats.
So I take your point about the politics. Let me just speak up a little bit in defense of part of the theory of sanctuary cities, because that's a label that gets sort of thrown around, and generally speaking thrown around derisively. At its core, which LA did what I'm about to describe back in 1979, I believe, there was an ordinance that essentially said the police shouldn't ask people what their immigration status is. And the underlying principle, I think, does make sense in that if someone who is undocumented sees someone being assaulted, or sees a property being burglarized, or sees another crime taking place, you do not want to give a significant disincentive to that person reporting the crime. And I think that that in itself makes very solid sense. It is in the greater good of the society that people who have information about violent crime feel at liberty to report that crime or say what they know to police without facing deportation. Now, firstly, I take your point that the political mood around immigration is very restrictive or conservative or whatever you want to call it. And I also wonder whether within what I have just described, are there exceptions made or not? For example, when an illegal immigrant is convicted of a serious crime, it seems to me, just as a moral matter, that person who is convicted should then lose the sanctuary, as it were, that the local authorities should be at liberty to say, person X who has now been convicted of assault is in fact here illegally, so, what do you want to do about that? ICE. That doesn't seem unjust to me, but I see the practical argument for the wider idea.
Yeah, look, in terms of asking people about their immigration status, I agree with you. I don't think the police should, as a matter of habit, ask that question. I certainly don't think they should stop people for no reason and they shouldn't stop people for no reason, period.
Right.
But stop people for no reason and say, oh, what's your immigration status? Absolutely not. I don't think that should be a part of just like a routine interaction with police to bring that up. If they grab someone for otherwise, making shoplifting at CVS, even something as light as that, then I think it's okay to ask your immigration status then. I would not have a problem with that. In terms of the other thing about the sanctuary city stuff, I think this probably frustrates a lot of people and a lot of people on the right that, okay, we've been told immigration is a national issue, it's a federal policy, right? There have been court cases to stop Texas, for instance, and Arizona from having policies that are harsher than the federal government policy because, sorry, even though you guys are border states, this is a federal issue. So if conservatives don't get to do that and have harsher policies on the border, why do liberal-run cities get to decide, oh no, we're going to do our own little mini immigration kingdom here?
That is a very valid point, and I'm not even sure what the standard liberal argument is against that. It is true that in the case of Texas or conservative border states, it is always said that it's not your kind of bailiwick, it's not within your jurisdiction. It is for the government in Washington to make that decision. I would, I suppose, defend in one way the LA issue, which passed unanimously in the Los Angeles City Council. So, if you want a different policy, elect different members of the council, I suppose. Yeah. And the other point is just in terms of differences, demographic differences in different cities and states and localities. According to one of the council members who voted for this, 1 in 3 Angelenos is an immigrant and 1 in 10 is an undocumented immigrant. So obviously that is going to, a mass deportation, if it happened, would have a very, very traumatic effect on a city where that is the makeup.
Yeah, and I don't want mass deportation to take place, and I think we have to be very careful about emboldening some kind of police state, especially like a national or federal police state. Again, I go to Rand Paul, who's the person in Congress most similar to my own political views, saying that totally in support of using ICE and FBI, et cetera, to deport people for otherwise criminal behavior, but we don't want to have the optics of sending the military into cities. That's one reason why you would want participation and assistance from local police who, at least theoretically, would know the local landscape or scene better than some distant federal agent. They might know how to approach, a housing community or something where maybe there's a lot of undocumented people, but there's one in particular who's been accused of some serious crime that we want the police to go talk to that person and their immigration status. And it might be better if the local cops might have more local knowledge about how to do that in a way that doesn't escalate things or cause other problems.
So to that very point, and linking it to the national picture, there has been a suggestion from some people in sort of Trump's vicinity, I think Stephen Miller, that if certain states which have Democratic governors refuse to use the National Guard for deportations, they would sort of import National Guard troops from Republican states. That just seems to me a terrible idea. Whatever you think of the underlying policy, to have, for example, Massachusetts, where Governor Maura Healey has said she would not facilitate any deportations, to the idea that you would then, get the National Guard from Mississippi to go to Massachusetts and to help with deportation seems a very, very bad idea to me.
Good discussion. Lots more to come still on Rising. Stay tuned.